The wind howled through the bare branches on the outskirts of Boston, carrying a bone-deep chill. Maya huddled in the driver's seat of her '98 Honda Civic, the cracked seat covers faintly musty. Parked beneath the buzzing lights of a 24-hour gas station, the car was more home than vehicle now. In the back seat, her 4-year-old daughter Lily slept beneath a pile of old blankets from a thrift store, her tiny breaths fogging the cold air. The dashboard clock blinked 9:47 p.m., its dim green light the only illumination in the dark cabin. Maya's stomach growled, a painful reminder that their last meal had been half a peanut butter sandwich scrounged from a church earlier that morning. She pulled her thin coat tighter around her, hardly a match for the cold, and counted the coins in her palm. 2 quarters, a dime, and a crumpled $1 bill. It was all she had left after a day of off-the-books dishwashing at a local diner. Not enough for a hot meal, even for Lily, but maybe enough for a cup of gas station coffee to warm her hands. She glanced back at her daughter, her small face peeking from the blankets, cheeks flushed in sleep. For her, Maya would keep going. She always did. Quietly, she stepped out of the car, locked the door, and stuffed the keys into her pocket. The neon sign above the station buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow onto the cracked pavement. Her boots crunched softly over the thin layer of snow as she walked toward the door. Inside, the cashier barely looked up from his phone, and the air reeked of stale cigarettes and burnt coffee. She poured a small cup, the cheapest kind, and handed over the 2 quarters and the dime. The $1 bill stayed in her pocket, a fragile lifeline she couldn't bring herself to let go of yet. As she stepped back into the cold, clutching the styrofoam cup, she noticed him, a man standing at the edge of the parking lot where the pavement met a strip of dead grass. He was tall, wearing a tailored wool coat that seemed out of place in this run-down corner of the city. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders hunched against the wind. His face, half lit by the street lamp, looked worn out, like someone who had wandered too far from where they belonged. Maya hesitated. He didn't look like the usual drifters she saw around the station, but there was something about his stillness that caught her attention. She walked over slowly, boots scraping against the ground. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Are you okay?" The man turned, startled, his eyes meeting hers. They were pale gray, sharp but clouded with something she couldn't quite place. Maybe sorrow or exhaustion. Up close, she saw the lines around his mouth, the stubble on his chin. He was older than her, probably in his 30s, but carried the weight of someone much older. "I'm fine," he said, his voice low and clipped. He looked away toward the empty road. Maya frowned. His coat was expensive, his shoes polished despite the slush, but his hands were empty. No phone, no wallet, nothing. She'd seen enough desperate people to know when someone was stuck, even if they didn't look it. "You sure?" "It's freezing. Do you need to call someone? Get a cab or something?" He shook his head, a bitter, hollow smile flickering across his lips. "No cabs. No one to call." Her chest tightened. She knew that feeling too well, the hollow ache of having no one to turn to. She hesitated, her fingers brushing the crumpled bill in her pocket. It was all she had, the last line between her and utter despair. But this man, standing alone in the bitter cold, looked like he needed it more. Maybe it would get him a bus ticket or a cup of coffee to get through the night. "Here," she said, pulling out the worn bill and holding it toward him. "It's not much, but it might help. There's a payphone inside if you need to call someone." His eyes widened, moving from her face to the bill in her hand. For a moment, he didn't move, as if her gesture had frozen him in place. "You don't have to do that," he said, his voice softer now, almost disbelieving. "I know," Maya replied, looking straight into his eyes, "but sometimes even a little can help." She pushed the bill closer, her fingers trembling from the cold. He looked at her, unreadable, then shook his head again. "Keep it. You need it more than I do." She bristled, not at the words but at the truth in them. The worn coat, the dark circles under her eyes, the shaking hands, they told a story she couldn't hide. Still, she tucked the bill into his palm, curling his fingers around it. "Take it," she said firmly, "please." Before he could argue, she turned and walked back toward the car, coffee cup still warm in her hands. She didn't look back, didn't want to see whether he kept the money or let it blow away in the wind. Giving it away felt like releasing a shard of her own fear, a fleeting moment of control in a life that had given her so few choices. Back in the car, she slipped into the driver's seat and checked on Lily, still fast asleep, clutching a one-eared stuffed bunny. Maya leaned her head back, the warmth of the coffee sinking into her hands. She thought of the man out there, wondering where he would go, whether he'd be okay. She didn't know his name, didn't know his story, but for a brief moment their lives had touched. Two strangers connected by a dollar bill in a flicker of shared humanity. Across the lot, Julian Roth stood motionless, the crumpled bill still in his hand. The cold bit at his face, but he barely felt it. His mind replayed the encounter, the woman's tired eyes, her quiet determination, the way she had given away the last of what she had without a second thought. He had come to this forgotten corner of the city to escape, to test a world he no longer believed in. People were selfish, he had told himself. Kindness was a myth, a transaction dressed up in virtue, and yet this woman, with nothing but her name, had proved him wrong. He looked down at the dollar, the paper softened by countless hands. It felt heavier than it should, weighted by her sacrifice. He tucked it into his coat pocket, his fingers lingering on the edge. For the first time in months, something stirred in his chest. Not quite hope, but a crack in the armor he had built around himself. As Maya's car sat quietly in the lot, windows fogged with breath, Julian turned and walked into the darkness. He didn't know her name, didn't know where she came from or where she was going. But he knew one thing. He would find her again. Not to repay her, not out of pity, but because in her act of kindness, she had reminded him of something he thought he'd lost forever. Julian Roth sat in his office on the 47th floor of a gleaming glass tower in downtown Boston, the city lights below stretching out like a glittering artificial carpet. The computer screen in front of him displayed financial reports, numbers dancing across the display, unread and ignored. His mind drifted, pulled back to that freezing night at the gas station on the outskirts of town, to the tired yet resilient eyes of the woman who had handed him a crumpled $1 bill. That bill now sat in his wallet, not to be spent, but as evidence, a reminder of something he couldn't yet name. Julian's life had once been a string of victories. CEO of Roth Enterprises at 34, the head of a real estate and tech empire worth billions. But in recent months, everything had collapsed. His longtime girlfriend, Claire, had betrayed him with his closest business partner. His younger brother, Ethan, the only person he had ever truly trusted, had taken his own life after years of struggling with depression. Those losses had shredded Julian's faith in people. He had grown cold, closed off, viewing the world through a lens of suspicion. And then, the woman at the gas station, someone with nothing but kindness, had cracked the wall he'd built around himself. He stood up, grabbed his coat, and left the office, ignoring the curious stares of his employees. His personal driver, Marcus, was already waiting beside a
sleek black Bentley. "Where to, sir?" Marcus asked, voice steady. "The gas station on Route 128, Julian replied, eyes fixed on the window. Marcus didn't ask questions, just nodded and merged into the night traffic. The gas station looked the same as that night, the neon sign still buzzing, the air thick with the scent of gasoline and cold. Julian stepped inside, his tailored wool coat once again out of place in the rundown setting. The cashier, a wiry young man with messy hair, looked up from his phone. "What do you need?" the kid asked, voice uninterested. "I need to see the security footage from Tuesday night," Julian said calmly, with a tone that didn't allow for refusal. He pulled out a $100 bill and placed it on the counter. "Just a few minutes." The cashier looked at the bill, then back at Julian, clearly weighing the decision. Finally, he shrugged and led Julian into a small back room, where an aging monitor displayed the grainy feed from the cameras. Julian watched intently, rewinding to the footage from that night. His heartbeat quickened when he saw himself, standing at the edge of the lot. And then her, the woman with the tousled brown hair and worn coat, approaching with a cup of coffee in hand. She said something, then held out the dollar bill. The footage was blurry, but her eyes, bright and unwavering, etched themselves into his memory again. "Does she come around often?" Julian asked, eyes still locked on the screen. The woman? The cashier shrugged. Sometimes. Lives in that old car parked out back. Bluish Honda Civic. Has a kid with her. Julian nodded, absorbing every detail. He left the gas station without taking back the 100. Out behind the station, the lot was nearly empty. Just a few trucks in a swirl of windblown trash. He walked along the row of vehicles, his pulse quickening as he spotted the old Civic, its windows fogged from breath inside. He stopped a few steps away, suddenly feeling like an intruder. Inside the car, Maya sat holding Lily close to keep her warm. Tonight was colder, and the gas tank was nearly empty, which meant no heat. She had just finished telling a story about an adventurous bunny, her voice soft so as not to wake her daughter. Suddenly, a shadow appeared outside the window, startling her. She tightened her arms around Lily, heart pounding. The man, the one from the other night, with the expensive coat and gray eyes, was standing there, staring into the car. She rolled the window down a crack, just enough to speak. "What do you want?" she asked sharply, her tone laced with the protectiveness of a mother. Julian raised his hand, signaling he meant no harm. "I'm not here to bother you," he said, voice deep and slow. "I just wanted to thank you for that night." Maya frowned, the memory of the $1 bill flashing in her mind. "I don't need thanks. Just glad you're okay." She started to roll the window back up, but he spoke again. "I can help you," he said, his tone sincere but hesitant. "You and the little girl, you shouldn't have to live like this." His words cut like a blade, not from cruelty, but because they struck a nerve she kept buried deep. She knew her life was hard, living in a car, begging for leftovers, no future for Lily. But hearing a stranger say it out loud felt like being stripped bare. "We're fine," she said, her voice stiffening. "I don't need pity." "It's not pity," Julian replied quickly, stepping a little closer. "I just want to help. A place to stay, food, whatever you need." Maya looked at him, searching his pale eyes for some hidden motive. He didn't seem like a liar, but she had learned the hard way that trusting strangers was a dangerous gamble. Lily's father, who once promised her the world, had vanished the moment she got pregnant. Others, neighbors, old co-workers, had turned their backs when she lost her job after a car accident. The world was not kind, and she couldn't afford to risk Lily's safety. "Thanks, but no," she said firmly. "We can take care of ourselves." She rolled the window back up, ending the conversation. Julian stood still as the window closed. He wanted to say something, to convince her, but the words caught in his throat. He knew he had no right to push, no right to interfere in her life. But when he looked at that old Civic, at the rust in the fogged-up glass, he felt an unfamiliar ache. Not pity, but helplessness. She, with all that she lacked, had given him more than anyone ever had in his polished, glittering world. He turned back to his own car, where Marcus waited, engine still running. "Home?" Marcus asked. "Not yet," Julian said, eyes still on the Honda. "I'll come back tomorrow." That night in his penthouse, Julian couldn't sleep. He stood by the window looking down at the city, the $1 bill lying on his desk like a challenge. He thought about Maya, about how she had rejected him, not out of pride, but because she didn't believe in kindness. Just like he once didn't, but she was different from him. She still gave, even when she had nothing left. He opened his laptop and began researching local shelters and organizations that supported the homeless in Boston. He didn't know where to begin, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to give up, not because he owed her, but because she had awakened something in him he thought was long dead. The belief that even the smallest act of kindness could change everything. The snow had fallen heavier that morning, covering Maya's Honda Civic in a thin white coat. Inside the car, the air was icy cold, even though Maya had wrapped another scarf around Lily to keep her warm. The little girl, her blonde hair tousled, was playing with her stuffed bunny, whispering an imagined tale about Adventure Bunny. Maya smiled, but the fatigue in her eyes betrayed her. She had barely slept the night before, worrying about the nearly empty gas tank and the few coins left in her pocket. Not enough for even a basic breakfast. Outside, a black Bentley quietly pulled into the corner of the lot. Julian Roth stepped out, holding a large canvas bag, his breath forming small clouds in the freezing air. He wore a gray wool coat, simpler than the one from the previous day, as if trying to blend into the rough surroundings. But his eyes, sharp and filled with resolve, hadn't changed. He approached the Honda Civic with slow, careful steps, as though not wanting to startle whoever was inside. Maya recognized him through the fogged window, her heartbeat quickening. This man, with his strange persistence, stirred both curiosity and caution in her. She rolled down the window just a crack, her voice cold. "You again? I already told you. We don't need help." Julian didn't respond right away. He set the canvas bag on the ground and pulled out a thick navy wool blanket, a fresh loaf of bread, still warm to the touch, and a small carton of milk. "It's not help," he said, voice low and sincere. "Just a friend bringing a few things. For the little one, it's freezing out here." Maya looked at the blanket, then at Lily, who was trembling slightly despite wearing 2 layers. Her pride screamed at her, but her love for her daughter was louder. She opened the car door and stepped out, her boots crunching against the snow. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, eyes wary. "You don't owe me anything." Julian gave a small shrug, almost sheepish. "You gave me something. I just want to give something back." He held the blanket out to her, his gaze gentle but unwavering. Maya hesitated, then took it. She returned to the car and wrapped the blanket around Lily, feeling the softness and warmth of the wool. Lily beamed, hugging the blanket as if it were a treasure. "Mommy, it's so warm," she squealed, making Maya's heart ache. She turned back and quietly accepted the bread and milk from Julian. "Thank you," she murmured. From that day on, Julian came by every day, always on time like clockwork. Sometimes it was a bag of apples, other times a pair of gloves for Lily, or a thermos of hot water so they could stay warm. He never forced her to take anything, just left the items quietly and chatted with her like an old friend. Maya, though still guarded, began to grow used to his presence. Once she even caught herself waiting for him, though she wouldn't dare admit it. One afternoon when the snow had stopped and weak sunlight broke through the clouds, Julian sat on an old wooden crate near the car, splitting a loaf of bread with Maya. Lily was napping inside, curled up with the navy blanket. "You don't talk much about yourself," Julian said gently, "but I'd like to listen. If you ever feel like sharing." Maya looked at him, her gaze uncertain. It had been a long time since she talked about the past, a wound that never quite healed. But there was something about Julian, the way he listened without judgment, that made the words come out. "I used to be a nurse," she began quietly. "Worked at St. Mary's Hospital. It wasn't a dream job, but it was enough for me and Lily to live okay. Then, there was a car accident, a drunk driver. I fractured a few ribs, couldn't work for months. The hospital bills piled up, and I couldn't pay rent. Eventually, it was just me in this car." Julian listened without interrupting, and a flicker of pain passed through his eyes. He thought of his own life, full of privilege, yet empty, and felt a quiet respect for the woman sitting across from him. "You're stronger than you think," he said sincerely. "Not everyone would keep fighting the way you have." Maya gave a small, tired smile and shook her head. "Fighting? I'm just trying not to let Lily go hungry." But deep down, his words touched her, a small light breaking through the darkness. Snow still drifted lightly over the back lot behind the gas station, dusting Maya's Honda Civic in a thin white layer. Inside the car, the air was bitterly cold despite Maya having tightly wrapped Lily in the navy wool blanket Julian had brought weeks ago. The little girl, playing with her stuffed bunny, let out a big yawn, her eyelids heavy with sleep. Maya watched her, heart weighed down. Life in the car, though familiar by now, was still a painful reminder that she hadn't yet given Lily the life she deserved. Every night Maya lay awake worrying about tomorrow, about food, about the cold, about a future that felt more uncertain each day. Julian appeared that morning, as he had become a routine presence, carrying a bag of fresh bread and a thermos of hot coffee. He tapped gently on the car window, his expression softer, yet carrying a new kind of resolve. Maya cracked the door open, surprised to see not just food in his hands, but a rare seriousness in his face. "Maya," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I want to talk. About you and Lily." She frowned, guardedness rising. "What about us?" she asked, unconsciously tightening the blanket around Lily. Julian took a deep breath, as if preparing to take a leap. I know you don't want charity, I get it, but I want to help you and Lily find a place to stay. A small apartment on Elm Street, not far from here. I'll pay the rent for the first year. Lily can go to preschool. You'll have time to rebuild. His words hit her like a slow-burning fuse. An apartment? A real home? With walls, a door, and hot water? The thought felt like both a dream and a trap. She shook her head, her voice unsteady. No, Julian, I can't. It's too much. I don't want to owe you. It's not a debt, Julian replied quickly, stepping closer, his eyes so sincere she had to look away. It's for Lily. She deserves a bed, a safe place. You don't owe me anything. Just let me do this. Maya looked at Lily, still smiling at her stuffed bunny, unaware of the conversation that might change her life. Maya thought of the cold nights when she held her daughter close just to keep her warm, the days she skipped meals so Lily could have a bite of bread. Her pride screamed, but her love for her daughter was stronger than anything. She took a deep breath, tears threatening to spill, and whispered, Okay, but only for Lily. The day they moved in, it was still cold, but the sun peeked weakly through the clouds as if trying to welcome them. Julian drove them to Elm Street, a quiet road lined with old oak trees and modest homes. The apartment was on the second floor of a red brick building with creaky wooden stairs and a hallway that faintly smelled of fresh paint. When Julian opened the door, Maya stepped inside, heart pounding. The apartment was small but clean, with a tiny living room, a compact kitchen, and a bedroom just big enough for a full bed and a child's bed. Cream-colored walls reflected the sunlight, and a weathered wooden table sat by the window, overlooking the snow-covered street. There was a small bathroom with a simple sink and a shower, which Maya looked at as if it were a miracle. Julian stood silently in the doorway, letting her and Lily explore on their own. Lily darted straight to the bedroom, squealing when she saw the little bed with pastel sheets and pillows. Mommy, look! My bed! She shouted, leaping onto the mattress and hugging a pillow tight. Maya smiled, but the smile faded as she stepped into the bathroom. She turned the faucet on, and warm steam rose from the tap, curling around her fingers like an embrace. It had been over 2 years since she'd felt hot water on her skin, and that simple luxury overwhelmed her. She locked the bathroom door, leaned back against the wall, and let the water run over her hands. The tears came quietly at first, then in heavy, uncontrollable sobs. She cried for the years spent living in a car, for the nights she feared Lily might not make it through the cold, for the shame of feeling like she had failed as a mother. But she also cried in gratitude, for Julian, for this chance, for the glimmer of hope that she might rebuild. Her tears mixed with the steam, and for that moment she let herself dissolve, grieving, but also letting go. Outside, Julian stood in the living room, hands in his pockets, listening to the muffled sobs through the door. He didn't knock, didn't say anything, just stood there, his chest heavy. He thought of the money he'd spent on this apartment, a small sum for someone like him, and realized it was nothing compared to the kindness Maya had given him that night at the gas station. Money could buy a roof, but only kindness could reach the heart. Maya had taught him that. When Maya came out, eyes red but composed, she found Julian in the kitchen, quietly unpacking a bag of groceries, milk, bread, pasta, and a jar of tomato sauce. I thought you might want to cook something tonight, he said awkwardly. A real meal. She looked at him, wanting to say something. Thank you, I'm sorry, or to explain her tears, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded and whispered, Thank you, Julian. Really? He smiled, a rare, genuine smile. You don't need to thank me. Just keep letting Lily laugh like that. He nodded toward the bedroom, where the little girl was stretched across her new bed, pretending to sleep with her bunny tucked under her chin. I'll go now, Julian said. If you need anything, just call. As he left, Maya stood in the middle of the apartment, holding Lily as the child ran into her arms. She looked around, the walls, the beds, the hot running water, and felt something unfamiliar, safety. For the first time in years, she didn't have to worry about tonight or tomorrow. She knew the road ahead was still long, but this apartment, small as it was a beginning. And in her heart, a seed of hope began to grow, planted by the kindness of a man who had once been a stranger. Early spring sunlight filtered through the window of the small Elm Street apartment, casting a warm glow on the kitchen table where Maya was preparing breakfast for Lily. A plate of toast and a glass of milk. Simple, yet for the two of them, it felt like a luxury. Maya watched Lily, who was humming a made-up song while coloring on a piece of paper, and for the first time in a long while, her heart felt light. This apartment, small as it was, had given them a new beginning. But deep down, Maya knew she needed more. A job, a way to stand on her own, not relying on Julian's kindness forever. As if he had read her thoughts, Julian showed up one morning with a new offer. He stood at the door holding a paper bag filled with pastries, his expression a little sheepish. "Maya," he began, "I have a friend who manages a cafe downtown. They're looking for a part-time worker. Nothing too heavy, just serving and cleaning up. I thought maybe you'd be interested." Maya paused mid-pour, milk carton in hand. A job? The idea excited her and terrified her. It had been 2 years since she last worked as a nurse, and the car accident had stolen much of her confidence. I don't know," she said hesitant. "I don't have cafe experience. And Lily—" "It's just mornings," Julian interrupted gently. "While Lily's at preschool, the manager's name is Sarah. She's kind and trustworthy. Just give it a try." Maya looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of pity, but all she saw was sincerity. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, I'll try." On her first day at the cafe, Maya's hands trembled as she tied on her apron. Brew Haven sat on a busy street corner with red brick walls and the rich scent of freshly roasted coffee drifting through the air. Sarah, the manager, was a warm, middle-aged woman with a kind smile who walked Maya through the basics of making cappuccinos and taking orders. Maya stumbled at first, spilled a latte, mixed up an order, but slowly she found her rhythm. Every customer's smile, every small compliment from Sarah became a brick in rebuilding her confidence. Julian often stopped by, not overtly, just enough to check on her. He'd sit in a corner, pretending to read the newspaper, but his eyes always drifted toward Maya. She found that his presence no longer made her nervous. Instead, it felt like an anchor, a quiet reminder that she wasn't alone. One evening after her shift, Julian invited Maya and Lily to dinner at a nearby family restaurant. "Just pizza," he said with a casual shrug, as if it were nothing. But to Lily, it was a grand adventure. She clutched Julian's hand and called him Mr. Warm because of the blanket he'd once brought, chattering excitedly about preschool. Maya watched her daughter, then looked at Julian, her heart swelling with gratitude. And something deeper she wasn't quite ready to name. In the restaurant's soft golden lighting, a steaming cheese pizza sat at the center of the table. Lily drew circles on a napkin with a crayon while Maya and Julian talked. She told him about her day at work, about a customer who had tipped her $5, and her smile shone. No trace of the fear that had once haunted her. Julian watched her, heart racing. In that moment, with Maya's smile lighting up the room, he realized he didn't just want to help her. He wanted to be with her. He wanted to see that smile every day. For the first time in years, Julian felt a strange sense of peace, as if a fractured piece of his soul was slowly beginning to mend. Everything seemed to be falling into place, until one afternoon, as Maya was clearing a table at the cafe, a familiar face walked through the door. It was Carla, a former co-worker from St. Mary's Hospital, someone Maya hadn't seen since she lost her job. Carla, with her glossy blonde hair and lively voice, threw her arms around Maya. "Oh my God, Maya, I thought you'd vanished off the face of the earth." They sat down during Maya's break and chatted about old times. Carla asked about Maya's life, and she shared the basics, about the apartment, the new job, and a friend who had helped her. When she mentioned Julian's name, Carla's eyes widened. "Julian? You mean Julian Roth? The guy who comes in here wearing a gray coat, looking like he just stepped out of a magazine?" Maya nodded, slightly confused. "Yeah, that's him. Why?" Carla let out a laugh as if Maya had just told a joke. "Why?" Maya, you're talking about Julian Roth, CEO of Roth Enterprises. He's a millionaire, owns half this city. You didn't know? The world stopped spinning. Maya felt the blood drain from her face, her hands trembling. Julian, just a regular office guy? No, he was a CEO, someone from a world she had no access to. Everything he had done, the apartment, the job, the dinners, suddenly felt like charity. The pity of a wealthy man for a homeless woman. She felt like a fool, a puppet in his well-meaning game. I have to go, Maya mumbled, standing up. Carla called after her, but she didn't hear. One thought pulsed in her mind. She had allowed herself to trust him, and now she felt betrayed, even though he had never lied. Maya stood frozen in the cafe, the coffee cup in her hand gone cold. Carla's words echoed like a knife. Julian Roth, CEO of Roth Enterprises. He's a millionaire, owns half the city. Each word cut deeper, shredding the fragile illusion Maya had been clinging to these past weeks. She felt dizzy, as if the ground beneath her feet had given way. Julian, the man she thought was just a kind soul with tired gray eyes, wasn't who she believed. He was a stranger, someone from a world she only saw on TV, a world people like her didn't belong in. She clenched her apron, fingernails digging into her palms to keep from shaking. Memories of the past weeks played in her mind like a painful reel. The warm blanket he'd brought, the apartment on Elm Street, the cafe job. She had believed it was kindness, a bond between two people who had touched the bottom of pain. But now everything looked different, cold, calculated. He wasn't a companion, he was a millionaire. And she was just a charity case, a wounded sparrow he picked up to feel better about himself. That truth stabbed her deeper than any hurt she'd known. She thought about Lily, her daughter's radiant smile when she called Julian Mr. Warm. Maya had let her daughter, the most precious part of her, open up to someone she didn't truly know. The fear that overwhelmed her wasn't about Julian causing harm. It was that she had trusted him, believed in a world where kindness didn't come with strings. She'd once believed that, with Lily's father, and it had left her with a shattered heart and a child to raise alone. History was repeating itself, and she felt foolish and weak. Tears threatened to rise, but Maya bit her lip and forced them down. She couldn't fall apart. Not here, not in front of Carla, or the customers chatting nearby. But inside she was torn in two. One part wanted to run to Julian, to demand the truth, to believe he hadn't meant to deceive her. The other part wanted to build a wall, to lock her heart so it could never be hurt again. The distance between her and Julian wasn't just about money or status anymore. It was a chasm of shattered trust, and she didn't know how to cross it. From that day on, Maya began to pull away. She was still polite when Julian visited the cafe, but her smile became strained, her replies short. She declined his dinner invitations, saying she was busy with Lily. Julian noticed the change, but he didn't know why. He asked Sarah. He even asked Lily, but no one had answers. Each time Maya avoided his gaze, Julian felt a strange, rising fear. The fear of losing her, the fear of losing the one thing that had made him feel alive again. One evening, he waited outside the cafe, hoping to catch her after her shift. When she stepped out, he approached, voice quiet but urgent. Maya, is something wrong? You've changed. If I did something, please tell me. Maya stopped and looked at him. Her eyes were full of hurt, but also resolve. I don't know who you are, Julian, she said, her voice shaking. I thought you were just a regular guy. But you're Julian Roth. You live in a world I don't belong to. Julian froze, realizing his secret was out. He wanted to explain, to say he didn't care about money or titles, that she had changed him. But before he could speak, Maya turned and walked into the night, leaving him standing there with a heavy heart. For the first time, Julian Roth, a man used to controlling everything, felt utterly powerless, because now he was facing something he couldn't buy. Maya's trust. The winter wind howled through the streets of Boston, carrying a biting cold and thick snow that blanketed everything in white. In the small apartment on Elm Street, Maya woke before dawn, a gnawing unease settling in her chest. She pulled the blanket over Lily, but when her hand brushed her daughter's forehead, she froze. Lily's skin was burning, her cheeks flushed an unnatural red. "Lily, sweetheart, what's wrong?" Maya whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Lily opened her eyes, her usually bright green gaze now heavy and clouded. "Mommy, I'm tired," she mumbled, then coughed, a dry, rasping sound that echoed in the quiet room. Maya rummaged through the cabinet for the fever medicine, but found only a nearly empty bottle. Not enough to ease Lily's fever. The nearest clinic was over a mile away, and her old car had broken down the previous week, stranded in the parking lot. She glanced out the window. Snow fell in a thick curtain, obscuring everything. But she had no choice. If she didn't act, Lily could get worse. She wrapped Lily in the green wool blanket Julian had brought weeks ago, lifting her small, trembling body into her arms. Maya tried calling Julian, but her phone had died the night before, leaving her with no way to reach him. A flicker of despair crossed her mind, but she pushed it aside, clutching Lily tightly and stepping outside. The cold bit into her skin, piercing through her thin layers and worn boots. Snow reached her ankles, each step a battle against the wind, and the fear screaming in her heart. In her mind, painful memories surged, nights clutching Lily in the car, praying she wouldn't fall ill. Days watching her daughter go hungry, powerless to help. She had vowed never to let Lily suffer again, but now carrying her through a blizzard, she felt like a failure once more. "I'm here, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking in the wind, tears threatening to spill. "Everything's going to be okay." But she wasn't sure if she was comforting Lily or herself. The road to the clinic felt endless. Snow clung to her hair and coat, weighing her down. Lily nestled against her chest, her breaths faint, and Maya's heart felt like it was being crushed. She stumbled on a patch of ice, nearly dropping Lily, but tightened her grip and stood, biting back the pain in her knee. She couldn't stop. She couldn't give up. Yet deep inside, a small voice whispered, "I'm not strong enough. I've never been enough." Just when she thought she might collapse, a figure emerged through the snow. Tall, familiar, wearing a gray coat. Julian. He ran toward her, his face pale with worry, eyes wide as he saw them. "Maya!" he called, his voice urgent, cutting through the wind. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Sarah said you didn't show up at the cafe and your phone wasn't working." His words faltered when he saw Lily in her arms, his gray eyes flashing with panic. Without another word, he shrugged off his coat, wrapping it around mother and daughter, then pulled them both into his arms, shielding them from the wind. His warmth seeped into Maya, but it was his presence, like a beacon piercing her darkness, that broke her. Tears spilled down her frozen cheeks, mingling with the snow. "I'm scared, Julian," she sobbed, her voice shattered. "I'm scared you're only pitying me. I'm scared I'm not enough for you." Julian held her tighter, his arms steady despite the howling wind. He leaned down, meeting her eyes, his gray gaze filled with pain, but also an unmistakable love. "Pity?" he said, his voice low but resolute, like a vow. "Maya, I've never seen anyone as strong as you. You fought through everything. For Lily, for yourself. You're the reason I believe in life again." He paused, his voice softening to a near whisper. "I'm here not to save you. I'm here because I need you." His words cut through the ice around Maya's heart like a blade. She leaned into his chest, tears soaking his shirt, feeling the steady beat of his heart against the wind. In that moment, amidst the thick snow, she no longer felt like a failed single mother or someone receiving pity. She felt loved, valued, not for what she had or didn't have, but for who she was. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this love. Julian guided them to the clinic, staying by their side as the doctor examined Lily. The fever was due to a throat infection, but the doctor assured them that with medicine and rest, she'd recover. Julian sat beside Maya in the waiting room, holding her hand, saying nothing but offering a presence that calmed her fears. When they returned to the apartment, Lily was asleep in Maya's arms, her breathing steadier thanks to the medicine. Julian brewed hot tea, setting it on the kitchen table, then stood at the door as if reluctant to intrude. "Thank you," Maya said, her voice soft but sincere. She looked at him, meeting his gaze without flinching for the first time. Not just for today, for everything. Julian smiled, a gentle, genuine smile. Don't thank me, Maya. Just let me stay by your side. He stepped outside, leaving her with Lily and a new feeling. Hope. In Maya's heart, a door had cracked open, leading to a future she had never dared to dream of. The warm golden light from the chandelier in the small Elm Street apartment cast a gentle glow over the dinner table, where Maya, Julian, and Lily shared a simple meal, pasta with tomato sauce and a bowl of salad. Lily, her cheeks smeared with sauce, rambled on about a bird at preschool, making Julian chuckle. Maya smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Inside, a quiet storm had been brewing, growing steadily since she and Julian had officially become a couple a few weeks earlier. Their relationship had started as a flicker, kindled by moments of sincerity, quick hand touches, late-night talks over tea, surprise hugs in the snow. Maya had opened her heart, just a little, hoping she might be worthy of this happiness. But Julian's world, a world of power, wealth, and constant spotlight, was starting to smother that flicker. It began when she overheard a conversation at Brewhaven. Two customers, clearly corporate types, were whispering about Julian Roth and the homeless girl. They snickered, calling her his latest toy, something amusing until he got bored. Maya stood behind the counter, gripping her dish towel, feeling stripped bare under the weight of a city's scrutiny. She tried to brush it off, told herself it was just gossip, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Then one morning, while scrolling her phone on break, a tabloid headline hit her like a punch. Millionaire Julian Roth infatuated with homeless single mom, love or charity project. The article dug into her past, life in the car, months of begging for leftovers, and twisted it into something cheap. They called her a gold digger, implying she had exploited Julian's kindness to climb the social ladder. Worse, the article included a blurry photo of her and Lily, snapped without permission as they left the apartment, making Maya feel like her private life was now a public circus. Her hands trembled as she read, breath caught in her throat. Each word felt like a blade, slicing through what little self-worth she had rebuilt. But what hurt most wasn't the insults. It was the fear that she was dragging Julian down. He was a CEO, a man with an empire built on reputation. And her? She was a single mom who once slept in her car and counted pennies for milk. How could she possibly belong in his world? How could she let him risk everything, his career, his name, his future for her? That fear clung to her like a shadow. Every time Julian came into the cafe, she noticed the customers' glances, at him, then at her, with curiosity or quiet contempt. She imagined the whispers at Roth Enterprises, boardroom disapproval, headlines yet to come. She thought about Lily growing up under the judgmental gaze of the world, being called the gold digger's daughter. The thought choked her, like someone was slowly crushing her chest. She began pulling away. When Julian invited her and Lily to dinner, she claimed exhaustion or said she needed to care for her daughter. When he reached for her hand, she gently pulled away, pretending to be busy cleaning or making coffee. Julian noticed the change. His eyes darkened with hurt, but he didn't push. He remained patient, still brought pastries for Lily, still sat quietly in the corner with a cooling cup of coffee, waiting for her to say something. But Maya couldn't. Every time she looked at him, she saw a world she didn't belong to, and the fear of destroying him overwhelmed any hope of love. One night after Lily had fallen asleep, Maya sat on the sofa, clutching a lukewarm cup of tea. Her gaze landed on a photo on the table, a Polaroid Julian had taken during their day at the park, all three of them laughing freely. Her smile in the photo now felt like a cruel reminder of what she was about to lose. What would you do if you were in Maya's shoes? Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. She thought of everything Julian had done, the blanket, the apartment, the job, that embrace in the snow. He had given her a new life, but she couldn't let him pay the price. She couldn't let their love become a stain on his name. She stood, picked up a sheet of paper, and began to write, her hand trembling. Julian, thank you for everything. You gave Lily and me more than I ever dreamed possible. But I can't let you get hurt because of me. I don't belong in your world, and I won't drag you down. Lily and I will be okay. Please don't look for us." Tears fell onto the page, blurring the ink, but she folded the letter and placed it on the kitchen counter. The next morning, as a pale dawn filtered through the curtains, Maya packed a few clothes into an old bag. She lifted Lily, still groggy with sleep, and quietly left the apartment. Snow was falling again, gently covering the sidewalk. But this time there was no Julian to shield them. She clutched her daughter tightly, silent tears rolling down her cheeks, her heart breaking with each step. She knew she was doing the right thing, protecting Julian, protecting Lily, protecting herself from a world that would never accept her. But every step away from that apartment, from him, was another cut into her soul. And she wondered if she would ever stop feeling this pain, or if it would always be the cost of loving a man she could never truly have. The snow had stopped, leaving Boston draped in a shimmering white coat under the pale winter sun. Maya stood in the playground of St. Anne's Orphanage, a few miles outside the city center. She wore an old coat, her brown hair tied back, hands busy handing out cookies to the children darting around her. Their laughter rang out, bright and innocent, easing the ache in her heart. It had been 2 weeks since she left the apartment on Elm Street, leaving Julian only a letter. She had come here, to a place where she could give something back to the world, just as something had once been given to her. Maya had come to the orphanage not only to help, but to hide. Every night in the small rented room she paid for with what little savings she had left, she wrestled with memories of Julian, his gentle gray eyes, that rare smile, the warmth of his arms in the snow. But she kept telling herself that leaving was the right thing. He deserved a life free of tabloid smears, free of boardroom whispers. As for her and Lily, they would be okay. They always had been. Today she was playing tag with the kids when a figure appeared at the playground gate. She froze, breath catching. Julian. He stood there in his familiar gray coat, but his face was gaunt, his eyes sunken as though he hadn't slept in days. The children glanced at him curiously, whispering to each other, but Maya remained still, heart pounding. She wanted to run, to disappear, but her feet refused to move. Julian stepped into the yard, his eyes never leaving hers. "Maya," he called, his voice hoarse, heavy with desperation and resolve. "I've looked everywhere for you. Sarah said you might be here." She stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. "You shouldn't be here, Julian," she said, voice trembling. "I made it clear in the letter. You need to move on with your life." Julian shook his head and took a step closer. "My life means nothing without you." He stopped just a few feet away, pain etched in his face. "You think you're protecting me, but you're wrong. I don't care about the board, the media, or anyone else. I only care about you and Lily." His words cut through the wall she had built around her heart. She shook her head, tears welling. "You don't understand, Julian. I don't belong in your world. I'll only hurt you, drag you down." "Enough," Julian interrupted, his voice firm but not angry. He dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the playground, in full view of the wide-eyed children. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small box and opened it, revealing a simple silver ring, unflashy, unpretentious. "Maya, I don't want you to be anyone else. You don't need to belong to my world, because you are my world. Just be you, the woman who gave me $1 when she had nothing, who showed me that kindness is the only thing that truly matters." The kids burst into cheers, a few clapping excitedly, but Maya just stood there, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked into his eyes, saw nothing but raw, unwavering truth, and for the first time, she didn't see a chasm between them. She saw a man who had chosen her against all odds. She stepped forward, knelt before him, her trembling hand reaching up to touch his face. "Julian," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I'm scared, but I love you." He smiled, radiant, rare, and slid the ring onto her finger. "Then be scared, but stay with me." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as the children cheered behind them. Maya buried her face in his chest, tears soaking into his coat, but this time they were tears of hope. Spring arrived in Boston with soft breezes and gentle golden sunlight, melting the last patches of snow along the sidewalks. The little house on Maple Street, just a few blocks from where Maya once parked her old Honda Civic each night, was now bursting with red and yellow tulips that she and Lily had planted together. The house wasn't big, but it was warm and welcoming, with cream-colored walls, a living room full of children's books, and a kitchen that always smelled like freshly baked cookies. It was the place Maya, Julian, and Lily had turned into their home. A year had passed since Julian's proposal at the orphanage, and Maya had become a woman even she could hardly recognize. Each morning she looked in the mirror and no longer saw the single mother who once shivered in the cold, counting coins to buy her child milk. Instead, she saw a strong woman with a radiant smile and eyes filled with hope. She had found herself again, not just through Julian's love, but through the journey of healing, purpose, and self-discovery. Maya was now the founder and director of Haven of Hope, a nonprofit organization that supports homeless single mothers. The idea had been born during her days volunteering at the orphanage, where she realized the kindness once given to her could be multiplied. With Julian's support, not just financially, but through his management experience and network, Maya had turned the organization into a beacon for dozens of women. She led skill-building classes, provided temporary housing, and connected mothers to job opportunities. Every time she saw a woman holding her child in a new apartment, she remembered that snowy hug from Julian, and her heart overflowed with gratitude. Lily, now 5, had blossomed into a bright, bubbly girl with golden pigtails and eyes that sparkled just like her mother's. She attended a nearby preschool where she proudly told her classmates about Daddy, the name she called Julian with all the love of a child. Julian, once the cold and distant CEO, had become a tender, attentive father, spending hours building block towers or reading Adventure Bunny stories. He had even learned to tie her hair, albeit clumsily, much to Maya's amusement every time she watched him try. One spring afternoon, the family of 3 sat in their backyard under the shade of a large oak tree. Lily was chasing a butterfly, her laughter ringing like wind chimes through the breeze. Maya and Julian sat together on a wooden bench, fingers interlaced. She rested her head on his shoulder, soaking in his familiar warmth. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" she asked softly. "From $1 to this?" Julian smiled, his gaze tender as it met hers. "No," he admitted, "but I know one thing. That dollar was worth more than anything I've ever owned." He reached into his wallet and pulled out the same crumpled bill, now preserved carefully in a protective sleeve. It sat on his desk at Roth Enterprises, a daily reminder of the moment that changed his life. "You saved me, Maya, not the other way around." Maya shook her head, eyes glistening with tears, but she smiled. "We saved each other, Julian. I used to think kindness was a luxury, something only the fortunate could afford. But you showed me it doesn't take much. Just a sincere heart." They sat in silence, holding that truth between them, until Lily ran over and leapt into Julian's lap. "Daddy, come catch butterflies with me," she squealed, tugging his hand. Julian laughed and stood up, chasing her through the grass, pretending to trip and fall just to make her giggle louder. Maya watched them, her heart brimming with a joy she had once believed impossible. The story of Maya and Julian was a testament to the power of kindness, humble yet sincere, capable of changing a life. Maya, once a homeless mother with her last dollar, had shown Julian that true value wasn't found in wealth or status, but in the ability to give without expecting anything in return. In turn, Julian gave Maya the chance to believe in herself and the world again, proving that kindness is not pity, but a connection between souls. Their journey was more than a love story. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, a single act of compassion, a crumpled dollar, a hug in the snow, can plant the seed of hope. And kindness, when rooted in true love, doesn't just heal, it builds futures. From strangers at a gas station on a freezing night, Maya and Julian had built a home, a family, and a legacy of kindness, reminding us all that sometimes the smallest things hold the greatest power. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe for more true-to-life love stories from Soul Stories. Because sometimes the smallest moment can lead to the greatest love.